Imagine standing in a trench so deep in mud that your boots are swallowed whole. The air is thick with smoke. The ground shakes beneath your feet. You haven't slept properly in days. The man standing next to you is your closest friend. Then, without warning, the sky explodes. A shell lands nearby. When the smoke clears, your friend is gone. Not wounded, not screaming. Gone. No body to bury. No grave to visit. Nothing but shattered earth where a human being once stood. Now imagine this happening not once, not twice, but every minute of every day for nearly 10 months. This was Verdun, a battle so violent that entire forests disappeared. Villages vanished from maps forever. Millions of shells transformed green countryside into a wasteland resembling another planet. For the soldiers trapped inside it, Verdun was more than a battlefield. It was hell on earth. And by the time it ended, hundreds of thousands would be dead, wounded, or missing. This is the story of the Battle of Verdun, the battle that turned men into ghosts. But before we enter the nightmare, we must understand why Verdun became the center of one of history's bloodiest struggles. By early 1916, the First World War had become a deadlock. Across Europe, armies sat in trenches stretching for hundreds of miles. Neither side could achieve a decisive breakthrough. Every attack ended the same way. Thousands dead, a few yards gained, then lost again. German military leaders knew something had to change. Among them was General Erich von Falkenhayn. He believed Germany could not win by capturing large amounts of territory. Instead, he proposed something far more sinister. He would force France into a battle it could not afford to abandon. A battle where French soldiers would continue fighting regardless of the cost. A battle that would slowly drain France of its manpower and spirit. His chosen target was Verdun. Located in northeastern France, Verdun held enormous symbolic value. For centuries, it had guarded the road to Paris. Its forts were seen as shields protecting the nation. To the French people, losing Verdun was unthinkable, and Falkenhayn knew it. According to his plan, Germany would attack Verdun, not necessarily to capture it. Instead, they would force France to defend it at all costs. France would bleed. Germany would watch. At least, that was the plan. No one yet understood that Verdun would end up bleeding both nations nearly dry. At dawn on February 21, 1916, the world changed for Verdun. German artillery opened fire. The bombardment was unlike anything soldiers had ever witnessed. Thousands of guns fired simultaneously. Heavy shells screamed through the sky. The earth trembled continuously. Trees snapped like matchsticks. Buildings collapsed instantly. Entire sections of forest disappeared beneath explosions. French soldiers huddled inside bunkers and trenches. Many believed the end had come. The shelling continued hour after hour, day after day. The noise became unbearable. Some soldiers later described it as standing inside a volcano. Others said it felt like the end of the world. When the German infantry finally advanced, they encountered defenders who were exhausted, terrified, and buried beneath mountains of debris. Yet many French soldiers still fought, even when surrounded, even when outnumbered, even when death seemed certain. Verdun's nightmare had begun, and it would not end anytime soon. One of Verdun's strongest fortifications was Fort Douaumont. Massive concrete walls and armored defenses made it appear nearly invincible. Yet in one of the war's most astonishing moments, it fell with shocking speed. A small group of German soldiers managed to enter the fort during the confusion of battle. Many French defenders had already been withdrawn or were positioned elsewhere. Within hours, Germany controlled the largest fort in the Verdun sector. News spread rapidly. France was stunned. How could such a powerful fortress fall so easily? Panic began to spread. Some feared Verdun itself would soon collapse. German commanders sensed victory. French commanders sensed disaster. The battle intensified. More men were thrown into the fight. More guns arrived. More shells filled the sky, and the death toll continued climbing. As German pressure increased, France faced a terrifying challenge. How could it keep supplying Verdun? The answer became legendary. A single road connected Verdun to the French rear. It became known as the Sacred Way. Day and night, trucks moved along it, bringing ammunition, food, medical supplies, fresh troops. The traffic never stopped. Broken vehicles were pushed aside immediately. Soldiers worked around the clock repairing damage. Drivers often traveled through shell fire. Many never returned. Yet the road remained open. Without it, Verdun would have fallen. Instead, it became a lifeline, a symbol of determination, and proof that France was refusing to surrender. History often remembers generals, but Verdun belonged to ordinary soldiers, farmers, teachers, students, workers, young men who had dreams before the war. At Verdun, those dreams were buried beneath mud and artillery. The trenches were miserable. Rain filled shell craters. Bodies lay unburied. Rats multiplied. The smell of death lingered everywhere. Sleep became rare. Fear became constant. A soldier could survive one attack only to be killed minutes later by a random shell. There was no safe place. No true rest. Some soldiers suffered breakdowns. Others became strangely numb. Many simply endured. One day at a time. One shell at a time. One breath at a time. They witnessed horrors difficult to describe. Friends disappearing instantly. Entire units wiped out. The wounded crying for help from craters nobody could safely reach. For many survivors, the battle never truly ended. They carried Verdun with them for the rest of their lives. If Douaumont represented surprise, Fort Vaux represented endurance. French defenders inside the fort faced overwhelming odds. German forces attacked relentlessly. Explosions shook the structure continuously. Supplies dwindled. Water became scarce. Conditions grew desperate. Yet the defenders refused to surrender. For days they fought in darkness, in tunnels, in corridors, in cramped underground chambers. Hand grenades exploded in confined spaces. Gunfire echoed through concrete passageways. The fighting became brutal and personal. When surrender finally became unavoidable, the defenders emerged exhausted but respected. Even German officers admired their determination. Verdun had become a contest of human endurance as much as military power. As months passed, Verdun itself began disappearing. Forests vanished. Fields became wastelands. Villages ceased to exist. Millions of shells churned the landscape endlessly. Some areas were hit so many times that no recognizable features remained. The ground became a maze of craters. Trees stood as black skeletons. Animals disappeared. Nature itself seemed to retreat. Pilots flying overhead struggled to recognize the terrain. Maps quickly became outdated. Everything had changed. The battlefield looked less like Earth and more like the surface of another world. A world built from destruction. Germany expected France to collapse. Instead, French resistance hardened. A powerful slogan spread through the ranks. "They shall not pass." The words became a rallying cry. A promise. A challenge. French soldiers continued rotating through Verdun. Nearly the entire French army would eventually serve there. Each new arrival entered the same nightmare. Each departure carried memories they would never forget. The battle had become more than a military struggle. It had become a symbol of national survival. And symbols can be extraordinarily powerful. By autumn 1916, Germany was facing increasing pressure elsewhere. The battle that was supposed to weaken France had also weakened Germany. Both sides had suffered terrible losses. But France remained standing. Fresh offensives allowed French forces to regain momentum. Counterattacks pushed German troops back. Important positions were recaptured. Even Fort Douaumont eventually returned to French control. The battle's direction had changed. Germany was no longer advancing. Instead, it was struggling to hold ground. The plan to bleed France had become a disaster for both nations. In December 1916, the major fighting finally came to an end. Verdun remained in French hands. But victory carried a terrible price. Hundreds of thousands had been killed, wounded, or gone missing. Families across Europe received devastating news. Entire communities mourned. The battlefield remained scarred. Many bodies were never identified. Some were never found. Even today, remains continue to be discovered. A century later, Verdun still whispers its tragic story, the battle that turned men into ghosts. When people speak of the First World War, many battles are remembered. But few capture its horror like Verdun. For 302 days, men endured an existence almost impossible to imagine. They lived beneath endless shell fire. They fought in mud, smoke, darkness, and fear. They watched friends disappear. They saw landscapes erased. They survived where survival seemed impossible. Some returned home. Many did not. And countless others returned physically alive but forever changed. Verdun became more than a battle. It became a symbol of endurance, a symbol of sacrifice, a symbol of what happens when nations refuse to yield and ordinary people are caught in the storm. Even now, the forests around Verdun hide scars from that terrible year. Beneath the soil lie fragments of weapons, uniforms, and lives interrupted forever. Silent reminders of a battle that transformed a generation, a battle that turned men into ghosts. If you enjoyed this journey into history and want more powerful stories from humanity's darkest and most defining moments, be sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and join us for the next chapter of the past. Because history is not just about what happened, it is about the people who lived it and the people who never came home.